Welcome to the Farming on Purpose podcast, a podcast for farmers and ranchers ready to shift for a stronger future. Today's challenges in agriculture are new, but the grit and determination required to be successful are not. On the Farming on Purpose podcast, you'll hear how producers of all sizes and practices are moving mountains for things they believe in, all in the name of an industry that keeps growing and innovating for a stronger food system and stronger farm families. I'm your host, Lexi Wright, and I'm excited to discuss where producers are finding success, challenging the status quo, striving for better, and keeping our heritage alive, all while producing the food we depend on.
Can we take just a second to talk about your business? You already know your business inside and out. You've built something worth talking about. But when it comes to marketing, it can feel like you're stuck. You don't know what to say, where to show up, or how to turn followers into customers. I know because I've been there. That's why I created the 8-hour marketing plan class. Think of it as your personal roadmap built just for you in just one day of focused action. You bring your passion and your business know-how and use our step-by-step video process to craft your strategy to help you reach the right people and grow your business. This process helps you get around second-guessing, wasted time, and feeling overwhelmed. We create a clear plan that fits your business, your life, and gets results. You're the expert in what you do. Let us help you build a plan to show it off. Jump into the 8-hour marketing plan class at backpocketsocial.com/8 hours. That's backpocketsocial.com/8 hours.
Welcome back to Farming on Purpose. We'll kick off today's episode with an announcement, and that is that our podcast will be taking a little bit of a different form over the next couple of months as we enjoy summer at home on the farm with the kids, and we shift priorities a little bit. I feel like there are a lot of projects around the farm that we have not been able to get to. There's a lot of activities that we want to show up better for. And to do that, we need to shift how we spend our time. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is changing the podcast delivery just for the summer to focus on bringing together some of the wisdom that's been shared through the many guests on specific topics into kind of like little study episodes. So we won't be having new guests on the podcast this summer. I won't be doing solo episodes or any interviews or anything like that. But we will be taking the biggest takeaways and pieces of advice and impactful stories from all of our podcast archive and packaging them together to fit the topics that are most important and that we think listeners can gain the most from. So I'm really excited to do that. We've had so many amazing guests on the podcast who have really just poured out their story, not only of their farm and their ranches, but their lives and what has shaped the decisions that they have made for their families and how they approach having a business in agriculture today. And so I'm really excited to take a look back at some of those and see how we can help make sure that their advice and wisdom is shared with everybody in a way that is really impactful. So that's what this summer is going to look like. We will drop a couple of those big episodes throughout the summer, and then we will resume podcast interviews back to normal, sharing farmer stories in September. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to this summer. And so as I thought about what this episode, this kind of hello to summer episode and farewell for a while from me should be like, I thought, maybe we should do a farm update, but I don't feel like there's a lot to update on the farm. Part of that is because of stalled projects that we haven't been able to get to. And part of that is because I feel like sometimes a topic we talk about on the podcast or have talked about several times is the stories that we tell ourselves and how much they matter and shape our daily lives. I've talked about this often and gotten on soapboxes about it. But lately, I feel like I'm not 100% sure what story I'm telling myself. And sometimes I think I'm telling myself stories that are not true when it comes to what our farm looks like, what our priorities are, how our time is spent. And that bothers me a lot. And that's something I want to change. So that's another big priority for this summer is figuring out what that story looks like for us and how we live up to it every day. And so instead of a farm update, today, I want to leave you with some nuggets to think about. Most of these are inspired by a book that I read, and I have to tell you, I really, really advise you to read it. It's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And I've brought it up a few times on the podcast. It's something that I read about 6 months ago, and it has shaped so many of the thoughts that I have had over the past 6 months as I think about our farm and how we spend our time and what we do to move our business forward. So it's a great read. It's an easy read. Well, I guess technically I listened to it as an audiobook, but I really suggest it if you have ever kind of just questioned where things fit in the world. It's a very good book. That's what I want to talk about today is some nuggets that I took away from that book and how I think they apply to us in agriculture as people who are trying to build businesses that support our families and support a way of life that we enjoy and want to pass on to the next generation. So one of the quotes from Morgan Housel's book is that people do crazy things with money, but no one is crazy. We all just have different stories. And what that means is, he's talking about money. I'm going to talk about just life in general and often about how it pertains to agriculture, is that we have things, these value and belief systems that have been passed down to us or that we have picked up and learned along the way. And they shape the decisions that we make. So while something that a first generation farmer might do sounds absolutely insane to a sixth generation farmer, neither one of them is crazy. It's just that they have different experiences, different opportunities, different resources to work with. And so this idea that we're not doing crazy things just because we're doing things differently is one that I find really inspiring. And one of the things that ties into is another concept in the book, and that is that tail events drive everything. Now, as somebody who relies on data a lot for my job in marketing, this is kind of a hard pill to swallow, if you will, because we spend so much time in our culture and in our society trying to predict the future. We try to figure out the formula of what to do to create success. So we try to write these formulas of X plus Y equals Z. And as we do that, we create models and we look at data, and so much of our lives in this digital age is based on this, that we don't even realize it. But all of this is basically trying to predict future behavior based on past behavior. And it doesn't take very long in life to figure out that is not always something that you can predict. There is no formula that is always going to be true. There is no formula that will guarantee success. If that were the case, then everyone would be successful if all they had to do was learn the formula or have someone tell them the formula. So we have all of these economists that are trying to predict what's going to happen in the economy so that people can invest in the stock market and have a good return on their investment. And yet, most of the time, these predictions are not necessarily true. They do not come to light. And that is because, back to the original point here, most of the world is based on tail events. Now, a tail event is something that if you drew a bell curve, the tail events are at each end. They have low probability. They're the outliers. They're the things that you would not bet on if you were betting, because they are not going to turn up most of the time. But at the same time, they are also still going to happen sometimes. Basically, the premise here is that they are the underdogs. And, it's hard to beat a good underdog story. That's because it's a tail event and it drives so much for everything in our world, basically. An example of a tail event that is very popular is Walt Disney. Walt Disney's first big movie was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And that movie took 3 years to make. He invested $1.5 million in it, which today would be like $28 million. And no one thought it was going to do well. He had no reason to think that it was going to be successful. And from it was born the empire that is Disney today. He had other failed projects before this. He had no reason to think that Snow White was going to be the saving grace of his company, but it was. And so back to Morgan Housel's book, the idea that he tries to drive home is that you can make good decisions 99% of the time if you're with your money, but there's really only a few key decisions that matter, and those are how you respond to the tail events. The very few things that have this huge oversized impact. And unfortunately, we never know which events they're going to be. We can't predict what the tail event is going to be before it happens. These are in ag, these are things like a drought that just goes on and on. I mean, we don't know anything about that, right? These are things like COVID shutting down grocery stores or having grocery store shelves empty, and then farmers that had the infrastructure to respond to that by having an online website or a way to coordinate with customers already in place really boomed. And so what do you do if these tail events are the things that actually are going to predict your success and how you respond to them if you don't know what the tail events are? The fact is, you have to figure out how to keep playing the game. And that is what Morgan Housel says in his book. The people who benefit from these tail events, the people who are able to make it a turning point, are the ones who stay in the game long enough to keep playing. And that's how we approach this. In a world where everything is based on a formula, we only need to worry about making the decision that keeps us in the game. And sometimes those decisions are hard, which is probably a sign that could be a tail event. You don't really know until after the decision is made. If you walk away or keep going, that could have been your tail event. You just don't know until much later. But the idea here of staying in the game is all related back to the stories that we tell ourselves. We can't stay in the game if we're telling ourselves a story of it wasn't meant to be, or I'm not good enough. We can't stay in the game if we tell ourselves a story of, well, I failed once and now I know that I will fail every time. As long as the decisions you are making day to day are continuing to move you closer to being the kind of farm or ranch or family business that you want to build, then that's keeping you in the game. And the story you tell yourself needs to keep you pursuing that goal. And that brings me back to numbers, that, we spend so much time trying to predict future behavior. Like I said, in marketing, that is a huge part of my job, is to see what data has shown that people will do and create a change that creates more revenue for a business. That is how I have built the marketing business that I have, and the clients that I have, helped them build their businesses. So again, this kind of kills me to say that honestly, The data is important and we can use it to make good decisions. But sometimes I think that we focus too much on the numbers and trying to predict what the formula will tell us, when instead we should be focusing on the kind of life and the kind of business that we want to build as the guide to what we do in our marketing and with our business. And those are the businesses that are going to be able to make it the long term because they have a story that they believe in. It's not just about the sales. It's not just about trying to, make a buck and drive forward. If they have that belief system, those values outside of the numbers that keep them in the game, then their business is poised to respond positively to a tail event instead of having a tail event and having to walk away. So focus on your priorities, pay attention to the numbers and the algorithms and the formulas that try to help you predict success, but don't let them run your life. Because at some point, they're going to be wrong. We're going to experience a tail event, and those formulas are going to become worthless as we have to adapt to change and what has been changed because of the tail event. One other point that I feel compelled to make here is one that I'm a little hesitant to, because I don't like to talk about politics on the podcast. I think everybody's political beliefs are pretty personal to them in this day and age. And so please don't assume anything about mine. I just think it's something that we have to consider. And that is that I believe that the current administration that we have is trying to artificially create a tail event because of these huge impacts that tail events can have. And I think as we see some of the decisions that are being made and some of the media as well surrounding it, that the things that they're trying to do, they're trying to create change. They're trying to create a tail event. And whether you fall on either side of the coin here, I think change is something that's pretty craved by the American people from our government. And so whether you like the change that is happening or not, I think that the steps that are being taken for the purpose of creating a tail event. And there's, there could be a lot of reasons for that. But one of the biggest in my mind is that when tail events happen, there's often a shift of power and there is a shift of circumstance for people who may not have otherwise had the power or the opportunities that they wish they had. If they stay in the game long enough, they could come out on top. And so I think that looking at the administration that we have, that is their desire, is to create a tail event, to create that change. And is it to make the American people happy? To have some change, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent? I don't know. Or is it for other motives and other reasons? It's hard to say. But I do believe that is what they are trying to do. And I bring this up because I think that it is impactful to the stories that we're telling ourselves now. Many of the policies and things that are happening in our government are going to impact us directly. If not already, then soon. It's hard to say that would not be the case. And so I think that as we tell ourselves stories and we try to figure out what story we tell ourselves, be aware that a tail event is trying to be created that may or may not impact you. But it seems like there's a lot of indication that is what is being sought. And so finally, to wrap this up, I think that it's important to think about what tail events could be happening in your life. They could be good, they could be bad. What kind of things are your daily decisions that you are making that could turn into tail events? Building habits and systems that keep you in the game And by that, I mean keep you motivated and keep you focused on your goals to continue to achieve the things that you're after, are the things that are most important. So consider, the things that you're telling yourself about your day-to-day routines, the things that you're telling yourself about your habits and your feelings about the way things are. That's a phrase that I think we like to tell ourselves as adults who are in the thick of kids and life and businesses, is that's just the way things are. That's just where we're at right now, or this is just the season we're in. And that's okay. There are some things that are like that, but you can also take a moment and examine your habits and the things that you're telling yourself about your situation to determine if they're true, or if they're the story that you want to tell yourself, or if they're the story that's going to keep you moving forward and closer to your goals or not. Because keeping you motivated and on course for your goals is what allows you to respond to those tail events in a way that allows you to make progress. So again, if you haven't checked out Morgan Housel's book, Psychology of Money, I highly recommend it. If you're interested in any other books I'm reading, I have been kind of on a reading sprint. And I say reading, but really I'm just listening to them on audiobook while I milk cows in the morning, because I have not been able to pick up a book and keep it open since my oldest was born. So that is how I get my reading in. But if you're interested in seeing what else I'm reading, I do post my reads on my Instagram stories, and I found quite a few good ones, either from recommendations from other people in ag, or ones that I've just been collecting on my wish list for quite a while now that I think you might like to check out. If you enjoy this podcast, they'd probably be right up your alley. So I hope you guys have a wonderful summer. Stay tuned for some of those special episodes that we'll be dropping over the next couple months. And be sure to check in on social media. I really enjoy hearing from you. I enjoy hearing if you're listening to the podcast, or if something that we've discussed on here has impacted you in some way, or even just made you think a little bit. And I'll see you guys back in September. Have a great summer.
If you've enjoyed spending time with us today, please take a moment to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or join the conversation on social media. Do you have a topic you would like to discuss or know someone with a story to share? Apply to be a guest on the podcast at farmingonpurpose.com. You can follow the host of Farming on Purpose, Lexi, on your favorite social media platforms for more content by searching for Farming on Purpose. And remember, if you look around your table and aren't inspired by the people there, it's time to find a new seat.